Hi, and welcome to the Relentless Marketing and PR Podcast. With me, as always, is Katie Atkinson.
And with me, as always, is Lauren Reed. We're two marketers and entrepreneurs, and we're here to share our philosophy on figuring it out, moving forward, and never giving in. So today, Lauren, what we're talking about is being authentic, being yourself, and staying true to your core values. So I think that's something that's very important for businesses, and especially when it comes to communications. So I wanted to talk through how do we define our core values, how do you stay true to those, and then talk about some examples where folks maybe lost their way along the road.
Sounds fun.
Awesome. So can you just tell us a little bit about how you came up with our core values? We have 5.
Right.
And I think I can name them all off the top of my head.
I know. I was just thinking,
I'm like, I'm sure I can know these.
They're literally on the wall in our offices, so I don't have to come up with them on the fly very often. But it's interesting. So our company is 7 years old, 7.5 about. We'll be 8 in July. And our core values have not changed. I actually came up with them within a few months, within 6 months of starting the company. And they were really just aspirational. And it was me sitting down and thinking, as we grow, how do I want people to perceive our company? So our listeners, as marketers, they're often thinking through this same thing, whether it's developing their core values or marketing messaging or positioning. I didn't have a set process that we followed, but it really was just a lot of, because it was me and one other employee at the time, a lot of just what's important to us. What are my values as a person?
Some of the things that you came up with are things that maybe are the opposite of what you don't want to be, right? So you may have heard feedback from, in the market, or, hearing people say, I know you say this a lot to me, I hear people say, I was paying this retainer and I didn't know what I was getting. And so you said to yourself, I don't want to be that firm.
Absolutely. So we've used our core values to address pain points among our target audience. And I can say that, and as I say it, it feels a little icky and inauthentic, but that's not the case at all, because it truly is who we are as a company. But yes, I absolutely looked into how are our core values going to be perceived by potential clients, and what are their pain points, and how can we answer them? And so measurable results is one example. We, meet with people often, and they say, yeah, we were paying this retainer and we just don't really know what the ROI was, or we're not sure what we were getting for, that $7,000 check we wrote every month. And that every time, I have a physical reaction. It just makes me feel a little bit sick, because I would never want any of our clients to feel like that. So addressing customers' pain points.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that translates across all industries, right? So if you're thinking about, if you're in IT, for example, and maybe a pain point with technology or IT is that they're not responsive, or I'm not hearing back, well, then you're going to maybe address that when you're coming up with your core values. But also, this comes back to the whole theme of our podcast, is if you're not living that out, if you're not actually being true to your core value and measuring your results or being responsive, then it doesn't matter what the hell you put on the wall or what you say.
Exactly.
Because they're not accurate.
Right, so you have to back it up. You can't just, slap some core values on a wall and then think it will just happen, right? So passion for excellence, top-notch client service, all of that bleeds into one of our core values, which we call passion for excellence. But that alone isn't enough. So as a layer then under that, we've worked with our leadership team to have some best practices and client service guidelines to ensure that we're always abiding by that, but also that our team, that they're being communicated to our team. Because we found, I think this happens in a lot of companies as leadership, we move so quickly, and things that feel very intuitive to us, because we've been doing this since day one, we started the company, it's not intuitive to everybody on our team. So the next step after developing our core values is making sure that we're integrating it day in, day out with our employees, so that they're the ones on the front lines.
Yeah.
And they're the ones our clients experience more so than they experience me or you these days.
Yeah, and that's why they're on the wall, so that we're reminding everyone on our team of those core values, and just some tips that we've come up with along the way. I'm sure that we can evolve this process, but we have a handbook now.
Yes.
Our core values are in our handbook. Our team members sign a pledge when they come on board saying, I understand these are the core values that I need to represent. And so I think not only just having those and telling people what they are, but making sure they know what they are. In our staff meetings, we'll sometimes have folks talk about an example where they lived out our core values or another team member did. And I think pulling that through all the different threads of your organization is something that can help embody that.
Yeah, pulling it through, that's really key. So our VP Jenny actually uses our core values in all of her hiring and performance reviews. I mean, she keeps them framed on her desk, and when she meets with our team members and does their one-on-ones, her feedback is directly tied back to core values. So yes, developing the core values is so key, but it's only the first step.
Yeah, let's back it up just a little bit here. When we're talking about core values, it's sort of a buzzword that we throw around, and we're talking about how to get there, but what is a core value? What are they?
Great question. It is one of those things we talk about all the time, and really, how does a core value differ from a mission or brand positioning or brand promise? In my mind, and I have no, HR background or anything, this is just how I've done it. Like, I really self-taught business owner, just learned as I go. So a core value, there's something that they really define how you're going to act day in and day out as a company. They need to be achievable, but also aspirational. So, if we're meeting our core values day in and day out as a company, there might be more we can do, right? Maybe our core values aren't aspirational enough. Another thing to think about with the core value is it something you're willing to stand your ground for? The core values really serve as a filter for all of our company decisions, whether it's hiring, firing, whether it's taking on a client. We've had a lot of situations where we meet with a prospect and everything on paper looks great, right? But there's just an uneasiness, a gut feeling, using our intuition and being like, I just don't know. So not an easy way, it's actually really difficult to turn down work, but is looking at the client, what they stand for, and then your core values. And can you truly meet your core values while working on each specific business opportunity? Sometimes the answer is no, and you have to be able to stand your ground.
Yeah, and for example, one of our core values that's very important, I know it's really important to you, is giving back.
Right.
Give back. So we have a program called Be the Good that I know we're going to talk about in other episodes, but it's very near and dear to our hearts, and it's something that's a filter for everyone we hire. So if we were to say, go meet with a company or a business that maybe wants to do cause marketing, but they only want to get the benefit of it, or they're not as genuine about giving back, or they're doing it for the headlines, which sometimes happens, that's probably not going to line up well with our organization.
Right. So give back, it's my favorite core value. I'll always say measurable results is our most important, because that's how then we're able to give back, by getting the measurable results for our clients, for providing excellent client service, and then they're paying us. Which falls into straightforward billing practices, another one of our core values. But giving back, to me, it's so key. That core value, unintentionally, has really helped us with hiring, because our Be the Good program, probably 90% of our cover letters reference it. And it's been this great filter for getting the kind of people who will believe in our values and live our company values day in and day out. So that's been really exciting.
Talking about something you're willing to stand your ground for, and the whole theme of this podcast is, you do you, be yourself, be genuine, I hate saying the word authentic because I feel like people say it all the time now, but
it's definitely overused these days.
Authenticity is important.
And vulnerability. Can we talk about that too?
Yeah. Not my favorite thing. But when you're thinking about that, I read Brene Brown's Dare to Lead, speaking of vulnerability, and she had a tip and a process to help you define your personal core values, which I thought was really helpful, that I would like to share. So she has a list of just adjectives that describe you. So whether it's integrity or spontaneity or passion or whatever that might be, going through and scoring almost every word that's on that list and looking at that and saying, okay, what are my top words here? And it's in her book, Dare to Lead. And I thought that was really helpful for me as just a person. So like mine, I think one of my top ones is responsibility.
Yes.
So making sure that things, when I say I'm going to do something, I do it and I get it done, hopefully. So just, I think that that's another just tip that could be helpful for folks as they're either defining their personal core values or deciding if they line up with an organization or looking at their core values for their company as well.
Yeah, so I have a few comments on that. First, I love the idea of personal core values, and I think that's something our listeners can really relate to, because all of us might not be responsible for our company's core values, but we are responsible for marketing them, right? But we are all responsible for how we show up every day. And it is kind of interesting how we wouldn't run a company without core values, but a lot of people don't think about their personal core values. And we did a really great exercise last year. I'm in a group called Women's Presidents Organization, and it's a group of women business owners. And we were on retreat last year, and we were all talking, and we decided to do this exercise to where everyone helped you figure out your personal brand. And I think it's similar to what you just said with Brene Brown. And how we did it is everyone just wrote some words that described the person on an index card. And then so at the end of it, I had 16 words that people used to describe me. And whether, are those my core values? No, but it was a really good baseline of what people thought.
Yeah, you sort of focus grouped your core values.
Yeah, we focus grouped our core values. And, research, foundation of any PR and marketing campaign, right? So that's a great way. And it was hard, actually, to read what everybody thought of me because it wasn't always aligned with what I thought. So,
or what you necessarily wanted.
Yeah, what I necessarily
I didn't think
wanted.
They were bad.
No, they weren't bad. I love this topic, Katie. We talk about core values all the time within the context of our own company. But let's expand. Why are we talking about this as a whole, as the PR industry? Why are we talking about core
Why is it
values?
important for PR and marketing folks to
understand this process?
Sure. So for me, I think, and I help market our business, right? So I need to know our core values because you and I are the ones out there selling this company to other people. But if you're a marketer or a public relations professional, you damn well better know what the core values of any company that you're working for are.
Or considering working for.
Sure, because if you don't know what the company stands for, then how are you able to interpret that into a message that's going to resonate with anyone? It goes back to that buzzword authenticity. If people know if what you're saying is true and real, and if you don't even know what the core values are, then you're not starting off on the right foundation. So I think as anyone in an organization, you need to know the core values, but especially the PR and marketing team should definitely know that as well.
Absolutely. So I think some takeaways from this episode, because I know every episode we like to have some quick actionable takeaways of what our listeners can actually do. So whether you're looking at this from a personal core values perspective or for your company, I think the idea of focus grouping it, like informal focus grouping it, like we mentioned earlier, just having some people write down what they think of you or your company, some words, and then going through the process like you've suggested that is in Brene Brown's Dare to Lead.
So we like to have a key takeaway or two or three for our listeners from each of these episodes. So what would you say you could take away from our conversation today, Lauren?
Oh, so much. I always love talking to you, Katie. So I'm going to recap this, but then by the time this episode goes live, we can also have these on our website.
Yes.
On a blog. So check out our blog and we'll have some either downloadable content or we'll have something up to where you guys can actually take this process. If our listeners took one takeaway from this episode, it would be the process, that there needs to be some thought and process behind that. So how I would do that is I would try an informal focus group. Your core values. Now, whether you're doing your personal core values or your company's or the brand you represent's core values, or if you're an agency like we are and you're doing this exercise for your clients. So there's lots of different ways you can look at this. But I would definitely try and let's set the baseline. What do people think of you currently? Research is the foundation of any PR campaign, so it shouldn't be any different for this exercise. So after you informally focus group it, let's make sure that we're working with every layer of the organization, from employees on the front line who are communicating with your audiences day in and day out, to leadership, to everyone in between, to make sure every interaction is thoughtful and intentional. And then finally, you have to live them.
Yeah, just do it.
Just do it. That's Nike. Just do it. And that's the key. Like when we talk about achievable but aspirational, if you can't do your core values, if you can't actually live them, they probably shouldn't be on that list.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. If they're not actually executable.
Right.
Yeah.
Such great information on core values, Katie, and how our listeners can really dive into this themselves. But let's move on to one of our fun segments. Let's do flip out, freak out. And can we tie this into core values somehow? Is there anything going on that we've just talked about?
This podcast will be airing a little later, but something that recently it just happened, like as in yesterday, and I heard about it on NPR this morning, and I think it will be relevant down the road because it's something that brands and politicians and other folks tend to do, and I think it really goes back to your core values. So Hallmark Channel recently was airing commercials for Zola.com, a wedding planning website, which I actually looked into because I got fed one of those ads on streaming TV the other day.
Engaged, everybody.
But so they have a commercial and it has all different types of couples, and they have a same-sex couple on the commercial, and they started getting a lot of feedback, negative attention on the Hallmark Channel from some of their viewers, and they immediately pulled it off the air.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Knee-jerk
reaction to this. So they were flipping out. And then they got negative attention and feedback for pulling it off the air. So then they're freaking out. So then they put them back on the air. And I think if they had just known what their
feels very ingenuine, right? Like,
yeah,
it does not feel authentic.
Definitely not authentic. If they had just known what their core values were to begin with, I think it could have saved a lot of trouble and heartache. And I'm sure that their PR manager, who's probably hearing this from their CEO or whoever it is the one dealing with this on the front line. But I think it really goes back to a testament of your core values. If you know, as Aaron Tippin used to say, you got to stand for something or you fall for anything.
We are in Nashville.
I love that song. But I'm just thinking, if they knew what they stood for, and they could immediately say, nope, this is what we're going to go with. And I whatever people may say about a company like a Chick-fil-A or someone like that who has received a lot of negative attention before for similar scenarios, it's their core value, and that's how they live it. And they know they're not for everyone. So I think what's more important than being on the right side of something always is also having a point of view and knowing who you are, and that's defined by your core values.
Right, I love that. And yeah, I heard about that, and that's kind of crazy. I always think, as I know you do, I always put myself into the PR person's role when you hear something like that. And my guess is what went down, because this was over like a 24-hour period, and a few observations. Like, one, this is like Hallmark's high season, right?
Yeah.
This is like this worst season.
There were calls for boycotts.
Yeah.
Before Christmas.
I mean, there's a lot of people who
my parents
live and die for these, 24-hour Hallmark movies. I actually don't watch them. They're all the same.
Yeah.
Like, someone's spouse dies and then they meet the love of their life.
It's a lot of love stories.
But why'd their spouse have to die, So, and they're always in these really cute small towns too, that towns don't really look like that. But this is their busy season. So the marketing team's already overloaded. I mean, it's week before Christmas. But it feels like there was probably just a complete lack of communication, or they didn't stop to look at their core values. I wonder if anyone said, hey, who do we as a company, what do we stand for? Who are we? What are our values? And how are our decisions being impacted?
So thinking about Hallmark, right? What does it stand for? In my mind, as I think about Hallmark and their, what they bring, they're spreading joy and love and representing all different scenarios that might happen, thinking about Hallmark cards anyway, the different scenarios that happen in your life and how you deal with those. And I wonder if they even think about, as far as representing different, diverse groups in their programming. So like you said, had they stopped to look at their core values, would pulling that off the air because they got some negative flack on social media have been the right thing to do?
Right. It all feels very knee-jerk, and I'm not, ingrained in their brand. I don't know their core values, so I don't know how their decisions were impacted by that. But this isn't the first time Hallmark has gotten attention for knee-jerk reactions like this. Aunt Becky.
Oh, yeah.
Remember when that was going on with Lori Loughlin and the college admissions scandal? They immediately pulled her off the air, and I don't know if that was the right or wrong decision. I didn't follow that super closely, but I do know they got a lot of fan feedback, good and bad, from that as well. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. You know, when you have passionate consumers and fans who follow your brand day in and day out, and they feel really engaged and invested in you, and then you make a decision that they don't agree with, it's going to be a lot easier to say, we made this decision because it is what we stand for as a company, and here, look at it in our core values, than just making a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, just bending to the will.
Yeah, bending to the will of others. And perhaps you're never going to please everybody, right? Like I saw a sign once, and it said, you're never going to make everyone happy, you're not pizza. So I try to remember that. And yeah, I'm never going to make everyone happy, but if I know who I am as a company and as a person, and I can tie it back to my core values and show that as the basis for my decision, I can sleep at night.
Yeah, you know who you are.
Yeah.
You do you. One company that did it really well, Campbell's Soup. Do you remember they had an ad a while back, and it was two dads eating soup with their kids, and someone went off on social media and was ranting about this, and they just responded as in, they were like, you should take this down, and they were like, we think you need a nice bowl of Campbell's Soup. Thanks so much for joining us this week, guys. All of this information will be on our blog, on our website, and we'll give you some handy guides to help you determine your core values as well.